Available everywhere books are sold. A Moment in Time with Dan Roberts is produced at the University of Richmond with the cooperation of WCVE Public Radio. Our theme music is composed by BJ Liederman. Our sound engineer is Rob Richards. Transcripts, podcasts, audio, and video are available at amomentintime.com.
Wednesday morning here on KSJE, and it's time to take our weekly trip to the Encouragement Lab, and look who is joining us, none other than Dr. Mike Hattabaugh. Good morning.
Good morning, Scott. How are you doing?
I am well this week. Thank you very much for asking. And you, sir?
Hanging in there. Doing a little remodeling around here. So
I like it.
Set up today and see how it goes.
That's quite the lab that you have now going on at the Encouragement Lab.
I lost the skeleton in the background that you like so much.
I did really like that. Did you sell it, or can I still maybe get it from you?
It may show up again.
Okay, all right. That's good to know. But anyway, this week we are talking about something very trendy, Dr. Hattabaugh, and that is being woke.
Woke.
Okay. I don't know if we're young enough to even use that word in a sentence. Either one of us.
It's hard to use the right tense, right?
Yes. Right.
Actually, that word goes back to the 60s, I found out this week.
Really?
So yeah, people have been woke for a while.
Oh, okay. Well, how can we make sure that we are then?
Well, actually, I'm not here to talk about being woke. There are experts on that better than me. Here's what I want to talk about.
All right.
Is the far end of being woke is not a happy place. And if you talk to any comedian, the comedic world is really like just beyond exasperated by all of this, because in the process of becoming woke, we're forgetting to be funny, that the world is funny, that when we take ourselves too seriously, bad things happen.
Okay.
So that's what I want to talk about, that side of being woke.
Understood. Okay. So what can we do? I guess this also sounds a little like political correctness then, right? Is that also part of what we're talking about?
I think that's where it ends up, right? I mean, the far end of being... So the problem with being woke is define it for me.
Right.
I mean, I have a doctorate. I can show you what I'm an expert in. It happens to be communication and those kind of things. But the problem with being woke is who gets to decide who's woke, and that's the problem. Is I'm guessing that many people who have been on very violent and what we would consider to be unhealthy sides of wokeness in our history. The Inquisition, the people behind the Inquisition, guess what? They thought they were woke. That They had a belief that only they were right and everybody else was wrong. So that's my problem ultimately with a lot of the woke culture, is when it becomes this sense of I'm right and you're wrong, and I'm so morally right that I can hurt you or even kill you. That's my problem ultimately with the far end of wokeness.
Gotcha. Well, that does make sense, but I know the other side of that too, though, is that we want to be more inclusive to our fellow human beings and understand their perspectives and understand where they're coming from, and isn't that part of this conversation too?
Well, and I would argue that for decades now in my courses, I've been a pretty woke guy. I've got a lot of history of talking about what we do about different differences that we have. And so I am not saying that being woke is a horrible thing in that context. What I'm saying is that I'm starting to see a lot of people now that have decided that they have a belief about something that is disputable. It's not about whether or not true racism or true gender issues. In my opinion, again, this is my opinion, is that I think that we're approaching this line where the anger has become fury. And this fury is now fueling on both sides, left and right, a violent attitude that frankly, is scary for me. And I'm saying my answer to that is let's take a chill pill and realize that some of this stuff is funny, and that we should be able to laugh at people when they cross the line. And one of the things that's been missing in our culture the last 50 years is satire. We've kind of lost our ability to do satire, and I'm now seeing it. There's some people in England that have gotten really good at it, And anyway, I'm looking forward to the satire showing up in our culture, where we kind of make fun of some of the people that have just taken this to an extreme that's ridiculous.
Well, that's a good point, and I think you're right. And you started this conversation by talking about comedians and getting in trouble for trying to just be funny and point out funny things that happen in society, and yet they get kind of penalized for picking on a group, or we just can't be funny anymore, or at least find the humor in some of this stuff, which we should be able to.
Well, I was watching this one guy again. The hotbed of satire in this is in England, and
Right.
I've been kind of researching it the last few weeks because I find it to be. I stumbled across this guy in English television named Jonathan Pye, and that led me to another guy that has this fake Twitter account that's really funny. They're both English, and they're interviewed about it, and they said, the problem is not. That matter of fact, they tend to both be from the left, and yet that's where all their satire goes, right? And they said, look, we need satire on the right. And if you follow things like The Onion and the Babylon Bee, so that's a left wing and a right wing satire place that's on Facebook. I just find those to be really healthy. And I think that's something that we need to do. Otherwise, if we get too serious, man, I see the language. I've seen it in my classroom where I've said, let's have a debate, and really quickly it turns into name-calling. And that's, to me, where we're at in our political world and in our social world, and watch the Oscars and they're there. And, I mean, we're now being taught that that's what we're supposed to be, is hyper-angry. And I'm saying that's not going to get us very far, because ultimately that then will lead us to building walls that we'll never be able to tear down. And that, to me, that's one thing that's been great about our country is we haven't built walls up around our ideas. We've said, let's debate them, let's disassemble them. But now, I just read a study that said 80% of artists have held back their true artistry because they're afraid of being judged about what they say and do. That's scary to me.
Right.
Is that we're holding back on what we feel led to share or say. I know people that hold back their political views because they fear they would lose their job if they dared share it. So to me, that's where we got to step back, and I think satire fills that really well. It allows us to kind of be to laugh at ourselves about some of our very over-the-top beliefs.
I think that's a good advice, Dr. Hattabaugh, as long as we can identify satire and not necessarily share it on social media as a legitimate story. I've seen that too.
Well, yeah, by all, and the funny thing is some people, some of these guys, they post it on purpose. It's so obviously satire to most people, but other people are like, oh no, that's not right. They get in their face about it.
I know.
So you're right that if you're truly posting it as this is real news, then it's not satire.
No.
That's not satire to me. That's propaganda in its worst form.
And it makes you look silly, I think, by doing that. So there you go. Dr. Hattabaugh, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Good advice. That is Dr. Mike Hattabaugh from the Encouragement Lab with me this morning right here on KSJE, Farmington.